Asmongold has been shooting up the political ranks recently on Twitch and getting a lot of people to listen to him when he talks politics. This has gone badly for him when he talked about like how he didn't care about the ethnic cleansing of the past, and that was bad. But it's also gone good for him when it comes to, you know, some videos with some views. And so he reacted to this meeting. He reacted to Ukrainian-American diplomacy. And I had to see what the rest of Twitch commentary on the war, on the invasion, and on this diplomatic kerfluffle was looking like outside of that sphere. The rest of it, Asmon's sphere. Let's check it out.
So apparently, this
again, one of the biggest voices on the platform talking politics right now.
mineral deal, against all odds, is gonna happen.
And let's start right here where we left things on Friday. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy now says, "Hey, I'm ready to sign that minerals deal with the United States." This, despite his heated confrontation.
Why'd they give him? Hey, it's the content president. Why do they have a wrestling belt on?
And
He doesn't know. It's a boxing belt, but I mean, I don't know. He's not a sports guy, so I mean, I shouldn't be surprised. That's Usyk. That's Alexander Usyk. He's the unified, undisputed world heavyweight champion that came up from cruiserweight. He beat Tyson Fury twice, beat Anthony Joshua, cleaned out the division. First person to do it since Evander Holyfield, which is why he was at the whatever.
I'm sure you saw it with President Trump and Vice President Vance in the Oval Office on Friday afternoon.
Madeline Rivera is live in Washington with the latest for us. Hey, Maddie.
Hi, guys. Good morning. Yeah, despite that spat with President Trump in the Oval Office on Friday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says he remains confident that he thinks his relationship...
Everybody acts like that shit's a big deal. Like, it's not a big deal. People get in arguments like that all the time. It's not like... I bet probably privately it's like way worse than that. It's like not good that it was public, but on like a personal, emotional level with them, they probably don't give a fuck.
You get the Ukrainian... There's a picture of the Ukrainian ambassador during this meeting. I think this is the... 1 second. Ukrainian ambassador to America. Here's the picture. Yeah, no, I mean... No, I think this one was particularly bad. I think it was particularly bad. Definitely since she worked pretty hard to set up this meeting.
With the United States and with President Trump can be repaired. And like you said, Steve, he is still confident and optimistic that they can reach a minerals deal with the United States. He still wants security guarantees, though. But Trump administration officials say security guarantees are contingent on a peace deal, and they don't even know if peace is possible at this point. That's why they say they're trying to get Russian President Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table.
President Zelenskyy has thrown off the sequencing. And Margaret, let me tell you the most tragic part of this. The President Trump's idea for this economic arrangement was to further intertwine the American people and the Ukrainian people and show no daylight.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says a minerals deal is currently off the table. To get it back on track, some Republicans and U.S. officials say a major reset is necessary, and they argue that task falls on Zelenskyy.
Something has to change. Either he needs to come to his senses and come back to the table in gratitude, or someone else needs to lead the country to do that. I mean, it's up to the Ukrainians to figure that out.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to look what he's resting his arm on. Is that his knee?
European leaders
Is he sitting like... I'm sorry, I'm not trying to hate. I honestly don't watch too much Asmon. Does he sit like this when he streams? I feel like that get uncomfortable pretty fast, no? Or is it like one, like, I don't know. Dude, I'm literally sitting like that. Yeah, I just wouldn't do it while I stream, I guess. This is more uncomfortable for me than others. Maybe I'm just not flexible enough, unlike Asmon.
Are grappling with a fallout after holding a summit with other European leaders in London over the weekend. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced the outlines of a plan to end the war. The Associated Press reports the proposal would keep aid flowing to Ukraine and continue to arm them from any future Russian invasion. Starmer reportedly says the UK is ready to put boots on the ground and planes in the air.
That's crazy that they're actually going to send troops over to Ukraine. Like, I believe that when I see it. That's nuts. Yeah, is that World War III? I mean, maybe. Like, I don't really think it's World War III, to be honest. Like, unless they start attacking Russia, it's not really going to happen.
Plan would still need U.S. support.
Europe must...
Does he know that it's a post-war... Like, the peacekeepers would be sent to Ukraine after the war is over to stop a new war. It's not sending war troops over to fight, like, right now. I think the closest that's been discussed is, like, air defense teams in western Ukraine.
Do the heavy lifting. But to support peace in our continent and to succeed, this effort must have strong...
I'm gonna speed this up because most of this information we already know. I'm just waiting for him to say something. This is like he's absorbing right now like a sponge.
U.S. backing.
French President Emmanuel Macron spoke to another French outlet where he suggested that a limited month-long truce may be possible in Ukraine, and he said troops could be deployed at a later stage.
Yeah.
Lauren, Steve, Ryan, and Ainsley.
So, Maddie, when he left Washington on Friday, he said, I was not ready to sign that deal. 48 hours later, I'm ready to sign that deal, right?
Well, yeah. Yeah, fucking obviously, right? Like, I mean, that makes sense. What a surprise. Yeah. No, I mean, of course, that's what's going to happen, because the thing is that he did not say that. He never said that. Well, we'll see. Not until we see it. That's a good point. I wouldn't be surprised if he came back and did it, though. I'll tell you that.
Okay, so well, this is the problem. He's just taking... Okay, so this is the first problem. I don't even know if this is necessarily his fault, but he's using Fox as the source for what the Ukrainian president's saying. And so they're going to say what's necessary to, you know, get in that Trump room at least. So I think, like, he's getting, like, a diluted, like, oh, like, Trump, Zelensky's already conceded. He's already conceding, guys. Trump's strength. Like, that's the message that's being thrown out there. Zelensky is saying he's willing to sign the deal. They were supposed to sign the deal on Friday. So it's like his position is the same, but they also said that he still wants security assurances. So nothing has changed, really. It's just that, I don't know, Zelensky would try to be even more pillow-fisted about it. I don't know.
You know, we saw documents of this deal on Friday. Our Jackie Heinrich sent it out, but they were not signed. Of course, that means nothing was completely agreed to. But look, obviously, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, he was told reportedly by some of his advisors about how to approach the president here. And clearly, he did not follow that suggested approach. Now he says he's ready to sign the minerals deal. We will see if that is going to be happening at all.
Thanks, Maddie. He was going to sign the deal if they got through the press conference. That's all he had to do, was get through the press conference. The whole thing was
Don't
done.
take the bait.
It wasn't going to be. He wouldn't have shown up. He wasn't going to sign the deal. So that was a done deal.
What do they mean, don't take the bait? How do you say that? What, the president's bait? The vice president's bait? What do you mean, don't take the bait? The president should not be putting out bait during negotiations.
So as
They should not be putting out bait for what? What do you mean, don't take the bait?
Keane brought up, who might be his biggest supporter in terms of who he blames in Mark Thiessen's column today. He said, Jack Keane says, the only answer to the question.
Online 568 has donated $10. Hey Dylan, hope this finds you well. Keep fighting those Russian talks points. Hate that Dumbo Americans are spewing it.
I will continue to fight the talks points. Thank you for the 10. I appreciate it, buddy. Thank you, thank you. You've all been very generous today. I appreciate it.
So as Jack Keane brought up, who might be his biggest supporter in terms of who he blames in Mark Thiessen's column today, he said, Jack Keane says, the only answer to the question he should have understood going to the Oval Office is, the only answer to the question is, thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to work with you to achieve a peaceful end to this war, period. I understand he's literally at war for 3 years. We know people...
Yeah, no, they're trying to... They don't like... The thing is that he trying to argue this from a position of equality. He not equal to the United States. He not equal to Russia either. Like, you got to take what you can get. And, like, it shouldn't be that way, but I think it is. And, like, so, like, I don't know how do you do that in, like, you know, because, like, he doesn't want to look bad in front of, like, his people, too. Like, I'm not sure, like, how to handle that. Like, it's a bad situation that he's in. This thanking rhetoric is bullshit. It is bullshit, and it's not bullshit. It's the reason why they want him to do that is because it probably means that basically, this is what I think. Like, I don't think that Russia is going to want to do anything when they have this guy calling him a murderer and fucking war criminals and saying, like, Russia is terrible and shit like this, right? Like, they're not going to want to do and negotiate while he's doing that. And so if he keeps doing that, then the chances of negotiations go really, really far down.
Okay, so, no. I don't know where to start. So, like, the idea of Ukraine taking what it can get. Oh, they're not unequal with Russia. They're not unequal with America. That's how it goes. But Ukraine isn't just negotiating from the Ukrainian position. They are backed up by the Europeans. They're backed up by the Poles, Estonians, Latvians, Lithuanians, Swedes, Finns, and supposed to be backed up by an entire alliance. An alliance which is talking about financing programs. Like, I know the Norwegians just talked about like an 800 billion kroner. I think it was like 80 billion. I forget the exact amount. They have weird monopoly money, of course, but equivalent to 7.5 billion euros in aid to Ukraine, and that's Norway. We're talking about increases in Europe in aid to Ukraine. If we're just talking about Ukraine isolated on its own, then yes, it is not militarily equal to Russia, militarily equal to the United States, but it's not isolated. Zelenskyy has worked very hard to make allies, and he's trying to negotiate for the best position for his country. And like, when we say like, oh, you need to take what you can get, Trump needs to understand that he's underestimating the Ukrainians in the same way that the Russians did when they thought this war was going to last a week. When he says they have no cards, he doesn't know about what happened in the Black Sea with the Black Sea Fleet. He doesn't know what happened.
The sanctioned money held by Western Europe will be released to Ukraine? They will be up in a few months, and it's looking like Hungary and Slovakia will be emboldened to stop sanctions.
I mean, I hope it's seized. I have no clue if it's going to be seized. They haven't really talked about it. There's been discussion about it, but they haven't pursued it yet. But it is one of the avenues that are being looked at. And I mean, I don't know what will happen with Slovakia. There is some mechanisms they can try to pressure Hungary on when it comes to non-compliance and taking away voting rights, but they could still be backed up by the Slovaks. So they would have to stop the Slovaks from backing them up and blocking their voting rights if the Hungarians were going to derail European-wide, pan-European EU aid packages instead of unilateral aid packages like what the Norwegians did with the $7.5 billion 2025 aid package. Now, where was I? Oh yeah, like, Trump isn't calculating or bringing into the equation like, oh, Russia's Black Sea Fleet, half of it's gone. And they can't bring new ships into the Black Sea Fleet because of Turkish regulations on the ports, on the passageway that leads into it. What about the Ukrainian taking of Russian territory? Is that not a card? Russia is not going to allow itself to be occupied. What about the fact that the Ukrainians have held out for 3 years and they do have the willpower to continue fighting if they do not get offered a deal that will allow a just peace or, for example, to stop the Russians from invading again?
A curd is a curd.
Which Trump has not guaranteed.
A promise kept. Hope it helps towards the fire damage or whatever you need. Sorry it took so long.
Whoa.
Smiling face with open hands, scissor heart, Ukraine.
My goodness. That's a really big donation. Thank you so much, Blonde. What a weird way to... Thank you, Blonde. Representative of the blonde community. Now, I just saw, because it says blonde and then it has bomber, but it just says blonde on the YouTube chat. But when it's blonde bombsheller. But thank you, BB. I appreciate that. $100, my goodness. That's the biggest donation of the day. But yeah, that will definitely go towards, either that's going to go towards rebuilding my book collection, which I need to rebuild from scratch, or probably some electrical gear, which I need, because I am going to be buying a camera in the near future. My goodness. It's my pleasure. Thank you. My goodness. Okay, where were we? When I get a donation like that, I always get thrown off because I feel like I should be like doing something for it. Like I should flip or something, you know? Like how those NPCs do the, like, you know, those NPC TikTokers that like thank them 5 times for each like specific. But I'm appreciative. Thank you. But I mean, Ukraine has cards. And the problem is Trump treats them as if they don't have cards, which undermines their position. And then he takes away some of the cards that we can help provide them to get them a better deal, further undermining their position, because Trump's main priority is getting this done as fast as possible and normalizing with the Russians. Getting a best deal or even a long-lasting just peace for the Ukrainians is not his priority. That's why it seems like he's negotiating on behalf of the Russian position right now, because it's much easier for you to pressure the person that you're supporting than for you to pressure your enemies. But that's kind of the trick of international diplomacy, is how do you figure out the latter? Oh, what was the other thing that he said?
Then
oh yeah, this thing.
While he's doing that. And so if he keeps doing that, then the chances of negotiations go really, really far down.
Basically, if Zelenskyy keeps insulting Putin, then the chances of negotiating with Putin go down. This is not streamer drama. This is not like Hassan said about XQC, and then XQC said about Aiden Ross, and then Aiden Ross said about... No, this is not that, okay? This is international diplomacy, backed by hard power. The Russians respect hard power. They respect bombs. They respect bullets. They respect soldiers. They respect tanks. They respect jets. They respect missiles. Whether or not the person firing it at them says, whether the people they're bombing are saying, "Good sir, may you please stop the bombing," or "Fuck you, man, stop bombing us," like that doesn't really change anything. This is all just like the trifling, the sideshow of diplomacy. Putin doesn't need Zelenskyy to like him or to compliment him or to not insult him. Putin needs Zelenskyy to surrender. Putin doesn't care if he's called a monster or not. He knows what he's done, and he goes to bed every night knowing it.
Like, whether it's true or not.
And like the thing that Asmongold said, he said it drastically goes down. He's just speaking out of his ass. And he's thinking about this on a personal level, on a personality level. That Putin's thinking about this like, we need to be friends with Zelenskyy. No, they don't need to be friends. We didn't need, like, in order for us to sign a Korean treaty, a peace accord, or any ceasefire in 1953, we did not need to say that our ally was a dictator, but Kim wasn't. And in that instance, it was. In this instance, he isn't. We didn't need to do that, though.
They still go down. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter what's true. They don't want either. Yeah, exactly. And they want Zelenskyy to follow the lead. Are you not sure if Zelensky's grateful? I think he is. I think he's very grateful to the United States. I think absolutely he is.
Kiwi got a tier 1 subscription. The sooner Poland has the capability to do revenge at all costs to tank a Lelik, the more stable the world will be. Hope you have iodine tablets and tinned beans.
I don't have iodine tablets, but I should have iodine tablets. I should. I don't know. They wouldn't really do much in the immediate aftermath, though. I appreciate it.
I think he is. I think he's very grateful.
I mean, look, if stuff goes down and I'm in Ukraine, I don't know how much it'll help if it gets that bad, but you never know.
To the United States. I think absolutely he is. And I feel like the premise of this is a little bit silly, but they are trying to basically just get him in line.
They come back from war after 6 months, they're not the same.
And have him not talk
He's not
shit,
a typical
basically.
leader. And I'm not making excuses, but he goes to the front lines every day.
What do you mean talk shit? What shit did he talk?
Not talk
He's not
shit,
a typical
basically.
leader. And I'm not making excuses, but he goes to the front lines every day. Those 20,000 kids that were stolen, he knows those parents. They're sitting there in Russia. He knows most of the maybe 600,000 troops or 500,000 troops that are no longer on the battlefield, dead or wounded. But his stress is unbelievable.
Yeah.
But why an aide next to him says, hey, let's not, maybe this isn't a good time to show up. He didn't have to show up to that. He could have had that, they could have signed it, sent it, it could have been done. And all the pressure would have been on Russia, because all indications are Russia doesn't want to sit down and do anything. What their early demands were are a non-starter.
Well, he was told.
Yeah, they were a non-starter. We conceded on a bunch of stuff, and we got no concessions from the other side. Nothing announced. Nothing. So we gave everything up before the negotiations began.
Told to show up at the White House in a suit and tie. It was specific.
Yeah, if they told him to do that, he didn't do that. He in a situation where he should have done that. Like, the thing is that, Asman, you don't know what you're talking about, do you? What do I not know what I'm talking about? Because you're a consistent disagreeers, right? And so what are you unhappy about that I'm saying? And so Zelenskyy, no, the thing is that...
so the thing, for example, the thank you thing. Here's another thing. I didn't even mention this because it was minor. That Asmongold's wrong about that. Yeah, I'll answer for Maddie. That the, the thank you stuff doesn't matter. Well, it does matter, it doesn't matter. Like, but he did say thank you. Zelenskyy said thank you 1,000,000 times. And then the goalpost was moved later by the Trump admin. Well, he needed to say thank you during that meeting. They forgot, they must have forgot, or they just don't care, and it's just a malicious lie. He thanked them at the start of the meeting. So, like, if not mentioning that when you're saying thanking them is important, not mentioning the fact that he did thank them, not only on many other occasions, but also at the start of that very meeting, that he thanked the American people and thanked the country, and, you know, not mentioning that is not knowing. But, I mean, that's just one instance.
If you have these people that are going to give you a bunch of money and they have they have the ability to solve your problem.
Trump has not shown the ability to solve Ukraine's problem, or even a willingness to.
I would show up in a suit. I would.
Has he ever worn a suit? Of all the people to tell Zelenskyy to wear a suit, I think Asmongold is probably the worst person on earth to tell Zelenskyy to wear a suit. Elon Musk doesn't have to wear a suit when he goes to the White House. I think somebody suggested it might be good if you wear a suit. Do we have any confirmation that he was told to wear a suit by the Trump admin? And, like, it's fine when Elon does it. None of this matters. And by the way, can I just throw out there, this shouldn't matter. And if you think this matters, you're silly. Asmongold should be the last person on the planet who thinks that the way somebody dresses should affect diplomacy, right? Because Zelensky's sitting there getting asked stupid questions about his outfit when we're talking about a serious war, and then the criticism of that falls at Zelensky's feet as an American. If there was Ukrainians saying Zelenskyy should have worn a suit because maybe it could have helped a little bit, it's like, okay, you're an American, and you're like, you know, when we were like, you know, just yelling over him as he was trying to explain himself, and he asked a basic question for the gaping hole in their strategy, and they just lashed out like children. It's like, why aren't you thanking me? You know, and all of that situation, we're concentrating on, why didn't he wear the suit? Instead of the over-the-top, crazy reaction to the fact he didn't wear a suit, which Elon doesn't get, or any other silly ways that they reacted in this meeting. It's just, it feels like a purposeful distraction to obscure the fact that the president of the United States acted like a child in that meeting and doesn't have a plan to keep Ukraine safe.
At the end of the day, right? It's like, because at a certain point, you've got to put your pride aside. You've got to do what's going to work for you. I want you to describe how he's grateful based off his actions.
There you go. There's something. He saw this Kiev, and it's a Kiev independent video. There you go. He's trying to win me back. He's trying.
Mr. President, with respect.
Thank you. America's leadership remains solid. Thank you. All this for our great people. Thank you so much. And I think...
Wait, so Maddie was critiquing Asmon for saying that Zelenskyy was thankful? That was the critique he was getting from his chat? Is that how brain dead the Asmongold chat has become? That the critiques he's getting is like, wait a second, sir, he did say thank you. Wait a second, sir. What about the... Wait. No, it's... Well, Zelenskyy actually isn't thankful for getting help from his country, whereas people's getting dumped in mass graves. Oh my gosh. This is why it's important who you choose to peer review your paper.
Every American, every in the world who is helping for every life saved in Ukraine. All my appreciations from my heart, from the heart of Ukrainians, all Ukrainians, from our nation, strong nations, all the appreciation to you, first of all, Mr. President, for your...
Not to mention, when he was asked to wear a suit, he said he would wear a suit in the future. Now, some people, either through a lack of knowledge or because they're being malicious, I don't know, they took when Zelenskyy says something along the lines of like, I'll wear whatever you want. I'll wear a costume. And some people were like, he's making fun of him. He's making fun of a costume. You think it's all like... No, that's how you say suit in Ukrainian. He maybe forgot the word because, you know, I mean, this level of English he's speaking mostly has come from the practice in the last 3 years. I want to see you guys try to learn, you know, Ukrainian in 3 years and then try to speak it in a high diplomatic meeting where you're getting critiqued about your outfit and then yelled over. Man, again, that comic I saw on Twitter perfectly encapsulates it, man. This thing that the Japanese were sharing around right here, what it must have been like in that meeting for Zelenskyy. Respect.
Big support. And I want to thank all Americans, each and every one, leaders and ordinary people who see this reality,
how we doing?
Who know how important it is to protect freedom now, who support Ukraine. We are grateful to President Biden, to both parties and houses of Congress, and to every state that is involved in one way or another in protecting freedom.
Хочу подякувати пану президенту за цей його візит, за переговори, дійсно корисні. Дякую також від імені усіх.
He's blocking the text. He's blocking the text with the thing and his face. You can read like half of this.
Українців усім американцям.
To all Americans.
So don't you think you should maybe shut the fuck up and figure it out for yourself before you go around talking shit to me? What do you think about that? This video is not even halfway over, and I didn't start it from the beginning, and you still got here. Now you roaching out over some shit you're talking, making some bullshit up that didn't even happen.
This is good. Look, I mean, look, I don't appreciate, maybe I just don't appreciate the complexity and the nuances, Asmongold diplomatic workings in his statecraft. But I do appreciate him taking the time to be like, what do you mean they're not thankful? I saw him on CNN one time, or I saw him make that speech to Congress, or I saw him do this, I saw him do that. That's good.
Trying to insult me and tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. Why don't you educate yourself first? You're right, he's grateful, I guess. It's fine, right? It's just, again, like,
the White House, according to Axios. That's true. He was told, show up in a necktie. He was told by Lindsey Graham before the blow-up, hey, don't take the bait. If the president says something that you disagree with, don't.
Listen, I'm sorry. It's so crazy, man. It's so crazy that this is how it works, which is they're just justifying, like, the senators in the Republican Party said, look, if Trump says something crazy, you know, he says something stupid, or he doesn't like guarantee like your country's like future security, just, you know, just sit there, take it, kinda. And he just asks one follow-up basic question of security guarantees, like the Russians violate the agreements all the time, what do we do? And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, oh my God, what are you saying? It's impossible to make peace? And they just lash out like children. And somehow it's Zelensky's fault for daring to ask a valid question in public. You know how bad this is? How dare Zelenskyy ask valid questions? These truth tellers who wanted to stop the censorship, who just want to hear the cold, raw truth, and I don't care what the woke mob says. I'm going to hurt some feelings. I'm going to feel some tears dripping down your salty face. And then like Zelensky's like, the Russians violated all these agreements. How do we know they'll do this one? That's very rude to the president. Have you even said thank you? Not to America, not to the American people, but to Trump for whatever he did in the last 3 weeks, apparently.
Gotta be something, though, like, for real, whenever you think about it, the fact that he thought that, isn't that worth mentioning? Isn't that worth thinking about? That's what I was talking about, how echo chambers happen. And this is the important thing. That's why I didn't ban him. Changing your mind based off of
boyfriend. Look up MTG on why doesn't he wear a suit.
Yeah, no, I know that the suit comment was asked by Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend. It's because they've decided that, you know, actual journalists are boring and stupid and kind of woke, and so we need to instead have the people whose only qualification is boinging Marjorie Taylor Greene to ask the leader of the country fighting against the largest invasion in Europe since World War II about his fashion statements.
The important thing. That's why I didn't ban him. Changing your mind based off of new information isn't being stupid, it's being smart.
Thank you for the time.
I don't have anything negative to say about that. Not everybody going to know everything about everything. But the best thing that you can do is when you find something new out, you integrate that into your worldview in a healthy way. Why would I, well, like, because if the thing is, if you get banned, even whenever you're like, oh, I get it now, I didn't understand, then what reason would you ever have to ever capitulate?
I honestly, if I had a sit down talk with Asmongold, which I don't think would happen, right? I don't know how interesting to the general Twitch audience is, like, hey, let's talk about on the ground war journalism. I don't know how interesting that is to most of them. I find it fascinating. That's why I do it for a living. But I don't know if he would or others would. But I wonder if I was to sit down and talk to Asmon and we really go back and forth about this meeting and their diplomatic standards. I wonder what his position on Ukraine would be on how they've handled the Trump era and Trump coming into office and whose fault it lies with this Euro-Atlantic shift. Because I think I could make a really good case that it lies with Washington. Because I think there's information he probably doesn't know about the war. But I don't know how, if what he's saying, like, oh, I'm open, I'll just take in this new information. I have no clue if that's true or not. I have no clue. Considering how I've seen him debate before, I don't think he can be completely closed off. I'm trying to be hopeful, okay? I'm trying to not believe the worst in people. I can't tell if he's cooked or not. Well, someone could be, like, cooked on an issue, and it's not even, like, it's not malicious. It's just the people that they were, like, if you're getting whispered in the ear by Tucker Carlson on foreign policy, I'm not saying that's what's happening to Asmon, but other people, if Asmon is the person, like, telling you about foreign policy stuff, because you're talking to, like, that's how Theo Vaughn or Joe Rogan or any of these people, like, learning these, like, this crazy nonsense about Ukraine that would regularly not learn it. Like, I don't know how much I can hold it against them. I have to some extent, because they end up repeating that to their audiences and furthering the cause against this country. But, I mean, it's a lot of it's the information bubble. It's the information age. It's the, media literacy is a real skill you have to develop. And, if somebody's your friend and they sound authentic, or their media sounds authentic because it's not, filtered through the big screen on TV, it can be really believing. So, I mean, very believable. So I really don't know. I don't know Asmon enough.
What reason would you ever have to be reasonable if you know that every outcome will be negative? It's illogical and it doesn't create the result and the action that I want to see. So why would I do that?
Blow up. I heard Peter Doocy report yesterday from this couch that his sources inside the White House said that there will be no deal until Zelenskyy absolutely apologizes for what he did the other day.
So I've reached out to one of my sources in the administration.
Zelenskyy's popularity since the meeting skyrocketed. It's at 68% right now. It was at 57 before. Kiev Institute of Sociology, if you want the source. So, I mean, like, what if that's the message he gets from his people as a representative of his country? What is he supposed to do? Is he supposed to say, I'm sorry for asking the question that on every single of my countrymen's mind, which is, if we sign this deal, will my children die in the trenches like my husband, like my father, like my son, like my brother, like my neighbor had to? Because we didn't get the security agreements, and the best security guarantee the United States offers is nice trade, which, I mean, like, I don't know how a trade deal is going to necessarily dissuade the Russians from invading again. What happens when they bomb an American business in Ukraine? What's the response from Washington? Bomb Russia? Like, no. So what's the dissuade? It's just to think, oh, America has interest. They might do something. Do more than we did last time, send weapons, and under this administration, it's not a strong security guarantee. To not pursue it would be negligence of statecraft.
And this was on background before, but I said, can I share this? Because I was there 2 days before at the White House, and they were working the deal. And they said, fine, share it. They were going back and forth about this deal with Mike Waltz as well as Marco Rubio. Now, you got to understand the dynamics that were working. First of all, he skipped the meeting with Scott Bessent when he went over to Ukraine.
Slept
through the meeting. Yeah. And then...
So Asmongold, this is what I was talking about. Asmongold just lied. Now, I genuinely don't think he knows that he lied. Because this is the thing. And I can prove he lied. I'll do it right now. He was like, fuck you, motherfucker, to the other guy in chat. I won't get that from him. Because I can show you Zelenskyy, Scott Bessent meeting. I can show you the photo of them standing next to each other that was released by the government for the meeting that they had. Right there. Does Zelenskyy look asleep? They had the meeting. He did not sleep through the meeting. This is something that Trump said that was a lie, that was picked up by Trump World and then ran around with. Somehow that floated into Asmongold's ear, whether he saw it on his Twitter feed, whether he saw it on, I don't know, Blue Sky, I doubt it was on Blue Sky, whether he heard it from Fox as he's listening and using as a source to now. It's a lie. Here's the physical proof. Here is a picture. Or are we going to say, don't believe your lying eyes? I'm not trying to like hit this over the head. My point is the evidence is available. It's freely available. We live in the information age, but there's just so much useless information flooding the system that it overwhelms casual observers like Asmongold, he's not researching it like I am every day, 24/7, 7 days out of the week, right? And so he's not following all these diplomatic intricacies. So if Fox News tells him that he slept through the meeting, that he didn't really care, then he repeats it to his audience. And then so what's the narrative? Oh, he doesn't want to put on a suit. Oh, he's sleeping through the meeting. Well, that doesn't seem very thankful. These narratives build upon each other. And the thing is, for every one lie like this that you actually catch, let's say Asmon finds out about it, there'll be another 3 that slip through if you don't fix the information stream that allowed you to think this was not a meeting that happened in the first place. If you don't stop listening to the people who are lying to you, either to make money off the algorithm or for their own partisan ends.
Marco Rubio and the vice president, they come up with this deal with Zelenskyy, and he says, okay, I'm going to just go to the parliament to get it signed off on. Yeah. Then he goes publicly and goes against the deal. Right. So the administration was already on edge, but the president...
So to be clear, we're not getting a response from Asmongold here because he doesn't know the intricacies of the deal. He doesn't. And so when he says these details, none of this is true. What happened was Zelenskyy floated the idea of a mineral deal. The Russians, Freudian slip. The White House was like, oh, you know what? I'm okay with this idea. How about you give us half of your resources from now until forever, your critical port infrastructure, these bridges, give us exclusive right. And the Ukrainians like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not what we meant. We were maybe looking for more cooperation where we can both this is not what and this was for future aid. And you're not even offering future aid. That was our deal, was minerals for future aid. Now you're asking for half of all of our minerals for no aid, for like bare minimum aid of anything, for none of our strategic priorities. And so that's what happened. That's why it broke down. And Zelenskyy said, no, I don't agree with that deal, because that's not the deal they agreed to. If they didn't agree to signing away half of all the resources, they agreed to do a deal. But Asmon doesn't know this. And so it slips through. And this is why I'm telling you, if you're going to go talk about politics, please you can have private off-screen conversations with people who've been there. Or you can ask them questions. Have some people you can call upon and maybe be in the room when these discussions are happening so you can be a little bit more informed. Like, what are you offering people, Asmon? Like, what's being offered here? Oh, Zelenskyy should stop insulting Putin. Maybe he should have put on that suit. He shouldn't have woken up for the meeting that he did wake up for. Like, what are we adding to the content space here outside of your face in the corner going like, and just kind of like 6 out of 7 times just repeating what the people on Fox are saying, even if it's a lie. I don't sense any maliciousness out of this. I think he believes that he's not lying. I don't think this is a malicious action by him. I don't believe Asmongold has any motivations to be maliciously against Ukraine. That's why he was going back and saying, hey, wait, I think they're thankful. He wouldn't have done that if it was completely malicious. So I think it has to do with his information stream.
The president was still saying, let's get the deal done. So to Steve's point, he has this congressional meetup, and Lindsey Graham, to your point, says, don't blow up. Go out to be grateful, be thankful, and you go do it this way.
Wear a suit.
Wear a suit. He goes there, Ainsley, and
by the way, they say don't blow up. He didn't blow up. He just asked about security guarantees towards the end of the meeting, after others were like journalists were asking questions, and he's like, well, security guarantees are still important. Russians have violated 25 times. He asked this question to Vance. That's not blowing up.
The exact opposite of all the advice that he was.
By the way, Trump forces these types of issues in public all the time, purposefully, aggressively, and sometimes and sometimes in a blown up way. Like, if anything, Trump is like the king of this type of behavior.
Given, and he tries to litigate his case before the media.
Yeah, he should have worn a suit. Like, if they told him to wear a suit, he should have worn a suit. No, he should not. Why not? solidarity with your soldiers? What do you think the soldiers are going to care more about the war getting ended and having the United States be on their side more?
Well, not if they don't get the things from the United States that they need. Like, if you just bark like a dog for Trump, say, thank you, Mr. Trump, you're the best peacemaker ever. We give us whatever you want. If they, like, let's say he does literally everything Trump wants, and then they don't achieve a peace anyway because the concessions that are being asked of them by the Russians are too big. Then he barked like a dog and achieved nothing, and gave up probably a lot of concessions and a lot of leverage in the process. So, I mean,
or are they going to care about him what he's wearing? Come on.
I don't think like the wearing is the thing that like matters. Like, yeah, could Zelenskyy put on a suit? Yes, maybe he could. Would that have changed anything? Probably not, because this issue would have been brought up at some point. This is the problem. People are like, oh, we were so close. If this deal would have just been signed. I believe that Trump would sign a deal like this and still go back on agreements with Ukraine if he had an interest to do so, or he was not dedicated to the cause. And the reason he wants this deal is to settle previous debts. It's not to continue to support aid to Ukraine. What the Ukrainians want is security guarantees. What the Ukrainians want is future aid shipments, and neither of those were being solidly addressed. We got like a little bit on the aid that was starting to get addressed, but nothing on the security arrangement. Nothing on the security arrangement. And by merely bringing up the fact that he wanted that security arrangement, it didn't threaten the deal, the mineral deal. It threatened Trump's easy peasy peacemaking with the Russians by just giving them what they want. And that's why I think this lash out happened, is because Zelenskyy undercut surrender. He undercut all these concessions that would be seen by the Russians as surrender by the Ukrainians, victory in Ukraine, which would in the future encourage that behavior. So, I mean, if he was going to bring this up now, he was going to bring this up later, he had to bring it up at some point. And so that was always, if this is true, that what Trump, like, he's this dedicated to not giving any security assurances or making sure that the deal that's eventually ended has that as a guarantee, as a precondition, while giving all these concessions, then this type of blow up was going to happen whether he put on a suit or not.
Are you care about keep getting killed or what he's wearing? It's a stupid request. And that's exactly why he should have done it. The fact is that it's an unreasonable, weird request.
Like, I'm not against like Zelenskyy having to, like, not having to put on a suit, but putting on the suit just to see if it would go that little extra mile. I just don't believe it would have salvaged this. I just think it probably would have ended in a likely similar way, even if Zelenskyy said, of course I put on a suit for you, Mr. Trump. You're President Trump. Like, I just don't think that would have been enough.
That doesn't matter a whole lot. It's patronizing. It is. But the thing is that when you are in charge of something, especially people's lives, your ego needs to not exist. You can't make decisions and do things because of the way that it makes you feel or what you think. That's it. You can't do that.
But the breakup here was not because of Zelensky's ego. It was about him talking about the future of his country's security assurances. That doesn't seem like personality-based ego to me. That seems like pursuing the interests of your country.
When you do that, you lose. Such a dumb argument. It is patronizing. It is. But he is in a position to be patronized because the United States are the ones that have the money that are funding them. And the United States have been giving them a bunch of money, and they will continue giving them a bunch of money. He is in that.
No, they won't. They just stopped. So apparently not.
Position. We are their patron. He's being patronized because we are patronizing that country by sending them billions of dollars of aid. And I know a lot of people think that's not fair. That's not the way that should be. You could be right. You could be right about all that. But at the end of the day, the only thing that I look at, like, this is what I said before, right? Only do what is in your best interest. Don't think about ego. Don't think about how something looks. Look at what is the best outcome. How can I move towards achieving this best outcome?
And security, I mean, I think security assurances would be in that.
That's it. Everything else is noise.
And also, like, I mean, I think that American credibility matters. I think that people trusting the United States to make a deal is important if we want to sign deals, trade deals, or any type of deal, right? And so if we make a deal for them to give up their atomic weapons, and then they get conquered because we abandoned them, we're going to look, definitely if we said we were going to support them in that instance, which we did, we'd look like a pretty shitty deal maker. We'd look like a pretty shitty partner. We'd look like a pretty shitty ally, and it's worse for American credibility. So I think that sometimes when we say like, oh, this is all for Ukraine, we give this money so selflessly, we do it for a lot of reasons. We do it both to obtain American credibility, pursue nuclear nonproliferation because we don't want the message taken internationally to be give up your nukes, get conquered, get nukes today. It's kind of scary. We also have the interest of the fact that the Russians have been openly trying to undermine the United States. They want the United States to be inward. They want the United States to retract from the world, and they want us to fight each other. That's why they were I say this all the time, but I'll never stop because it's crazy. That's why they were trying to get Black Lives Matter protesters and pro-cop people to try to fight each other, setting up protests literally right next to each other so there's confrontations. That's why Russian intelligence services were spending time doing that. And so, like, there are interests at play. And even if you don't agree with all these, you could say, Dylan, I think that, you know, if we were just so nice to the Russians, maybe they would stop and they would, you know, just be nice to us, and their uncertainty about our intentions would fade away completely. Even if you believe that, you can at least acknowledge that when decision makers make these choices, it is not out of like, oof, you know, you're our patron and we get nothing out, we get something out of it. So it is true that we have a lot of leverage because we're the financial backer, but there's also the leverage of us being at the negotiating table, us continuing to get drone information from the Ukrainians continuing to be an ally, them supporting us in future military operations like they did in Iraq, the credibility of the United States being maintained, which Ukraine could be an open advocate against our credibility if we backstab. There's a yin and yang here that I don't think people fully appreciate when they hear about the aid numbers, especially the aid numbers that Trump says, which are just like preposterous. It's a new number every time.
And if you don't understand that, you're going to have a lot of problems in life. It's the message you're sending, like in most other jobs interview, you wear a suit? Yeah. No, you do. Last time you were on Zelensky's, you said J.D. Vance was being aggressive. I mean, I like this new side. I agree with it, but why did you change your mind? Well, it's simple. I changed my mind on it because I heard that they told him to wear a suit. If he wasn't told to wear a suit, then I would have had no problem with him not wearing a suit. But if they told him to wear a suit, he should have worn a suit. That's new information, so it changes the way that I look at it. Is that hard to understand? When you got people giving you billions of dollars and they say jump, you say how high. That's bullshit? Dude, that's fine. That's bullshit. That's bullshit sounds like that's a great tweet. That's a great Reddit post. That's a great thing that you tell yourself while you're in the shower thinking about a conversation that you had 4 years ago. But it's not effective. And that's what my point is.
He's, you know what, he's talking like he's Tao. He's about to take down Deng Zhuo. He's like this. He's not. Look, our diplomatics, your childish games of the morality, they're above. It's very funny to hear him talk like this. I'm not even trying to dog on him. I just think it's generally funny. It's actually entertaining.
It's an attire, exactly. So then do it. Fucking exactly. That's my whole point. You have a disgusting take on this? I'll pull up one person. I'm going to go ahead. I'll just, because I just want y'all to see that the thought never even crossed the American mind. So the stupid guy brought it up. He never said anything. He'd be talking about not wearing a suit. No, this actually, you know what? This one's not even worth talking about because Zelenskyy not wearing a suit has been a point of contention for 2 years.
My God.
Like you're just like the entire premise of your argument is wrong. It's not even worth looking at or thinking about.
What did he say? I was just more shocked by the damn.
Zelensky not wearing a suit has been a point of contention for 2 years.
Who cares? Who cares? Actually, who cares? I'm sorry. Point of contention with who? Why doesn't he? Yeah, some conservatives, like, that's kind of disrespectful. He doesn't wear a suit. So now he has to.
Invested in the satellites news lately? Maxar is blocking Ukrainians' access.
Yes,
I
talked
also
about
fear
this
what
today.
ITAR could do and how it could hamstring Airbus and their whole Pleiades program.
Yeah, we talked
for the CSO ones.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier on today's stream. I appreciate the donation. I always get knocked off of what I was. I don't even remember what I was saying now. I always get knocked off of it by donations. Worst streamer ever, actually. Thank you so much for the money. But the United States is also pressuring private commercial satellite companies not to assist the Ukrainians, even like without our interference whatsoever. Like, no, we're not paying for it. We're not giving the intelligence. It's Ukraine paying a private company to help them, and we're stepping in saying stop, because we're trying to pressure the Ukrainians and undercut their war effort as much as possible. And if they feel enough pain from the Russian bombing as we stop as much support from getting them as possible, then maybe they'll give up more of their country and be more conciliatory towards the Russians, making it easier for the United States to be very conciliatory towards the Russians and normalize without backlash from the American public, which I assume, if the peace deal falls through and he normalizes anyway, will result.
Like, you're just, like, the entire premise of your argument is wrong. It's not even worth looking at or thinking about. Yeah. It's just you're mad about something that didn't even happen. He wants to support. It doesn't hurt him to wear a suit. When he was asked, he should have worn it. Yeah. People are arguing with you about this. It just shows you his men's age. There's a lot of young...
I'm sorry. It is... We're 17 minutes into this video. People... This is a real war. This is what we're talking about. That's the reason this fell through. We're talking about the suit. See, I honestly... This feels like watching a cat chase a red dot. That's my honest opinion. And I'm not trying to be mean. This feels like what the Trump administration said, like, God, how can we go after him? How can we go after him, undercut the credibility, make it easier for us to pull the plug? I don't know. Like, it's kind of hard to attack him on the merits of the war, because, like,
morally corrupt,
and Trump's not really consistent. He'll say, like, oh, it's all about NATO expansion, and then in the next sentence he'll say, Ukraine's always been the apple of Putin's eye. He told me about it all the time. Like, he doesn't even know he's contradicting himself, and he's contradicting himself. The suit's an easy one. It's a dumb, tweetable, shareable one, and so I think it was used as an avenue to undermine the Ukrainians as a public display, for the public, while putting all the, like, actual geopolitics behind the scenes. Like, I don't think the suit would have really changed anything. It was an excuse, if anything. If anything. And so making the whole video about the deal breaking down and the split of the Euro-Atlantic Alliance about the suit is chasing the red dot put out to distract you.
Men, that one of the most important things for them is pride. And it's about their image and the way that they look. And for a lot of young men, especially people that don't have established egos and they don't have a lot of things on their own, they are really, like, being told what to do is the last thing they want to deal with, right? Trump as well. Trump is very prideful. He is, but he's the one in control. So you have
when the meeting broke down, it wasn't the suit. The meeting broke down with Ukraine when the Ukrainians asserted the need for security assurances so that the Russians wouldn't invade again. That's when the meeting broke down. That's when the Ukrainians were kicked out of the White House. And that's when the plug on all the aid programs were starting to get pulled outside of U.S. aid, which was already pulled for Ukraine a bit ago once they gutted it unconstitutionally.
You have to play on his side. That's the way it works. You ever had an asshole boss, but you still got to say, thank you, sir. Your suit looks nice, sir. Good job, sir. Funny joke, sir. Absolutely. Suck it the fuck up and deal with it. You're making decisions for millions of people. It's not about you. Make the right...
So your options for the top of Twitch political commentary on Ukraine is this or Hassan? Take me back to the trenches, boys. Take me back to the trenches.
Decision for the most people. That's the way I see it. And if they told him to do that, he should have done it. That's it. And also, by the way, I pray that you are never in a situation with a person like that that is willing to put your security, your quality of life, or your safety on the line to maintain their own pride.
Is that how he's describing Zelenskyy? Because he didn't put on a suit? That's what this is about now? That's what we're dedicating this section for? The suit wouldn't have changed anything. The suit, and you even listen to Zelenskyy was conciliatory on the suit during the meeting. He said, after the war, I'll wear whatever suit you want. He even used the Ukrainian word costume, which people misunderstood for suit. He was real conciliatory. I'll wear a suit like yours. Maybe even one better. That was funny, but yeah, still, like, he was around the idea that, he'll concede to this after the war, but he wears that uniform to make a point. Like when Winston Churchill visited the United States and he wore a uniform that was military-esque to make a point that I am leading a country at war. We are under siege. And that's the point. And he's said this again and again and again. And so why are we focusing on this? This isn't even the reason the meeting broke down. This is just the stuff for the Fox News viewers to gobble up. This is for the NPCs, Asmon. Come on.
It's a very bad position to be in.
Amazing that we have helped them so much, given them so many resources, so much money, so much equipment, and that is the way he was treating our president and J.D. Vance in the Oval Office.
He wants more.
He's saying he told the BBC he's still willing to have a constructive dialogue with the United States. He said, I just want the Ukrainians.
Listen, like that's the reaction he gives to the suit. Fox News host, how dare he disrespect the president by asking that question? He wants war. You know how many graves that man has seen? Mass graves, all the evidence of war crimes, the assassination attempts on him. He has to go. He wants war. The war he didn't start. He wants war. As the Russians set records for drone bombings. Asmon. Look, it's just I'm not trying to. All I'm saying is it feels like so much scrutiny on the suit. So much scrutiny on the suit. It just feels like we're chasing that red dot.
In position to be heard. We want our partners to remember who the aggressor is in this war. Here is Secretary Marco Rubio.
I really am puzzled why anyone thinks that trying to be a peacemaker is a bad thing. It's only a bad thing when it's Donald Trump trying to do it. I would ask everybody this. If there are no negotiations, what is the alternative? Another 4 years of war, another 3 years of war in which the United States and Europe continues to pour billions of dollars into a war in Ukraine? Is that the alternative? I've asked every foreign minister I meet with, tell me your idea of how this turns out.
The alternative is, instead of pressuring the Ukrainians, you pressure the Russians. And you say, like, look, we are willing to increase aid this way if you do not come to the table. Here is a deal that is semi-compromising. The Ukrainians make some concessions, and the Russians make some concessions. I have yet to see the Russians make any. It's only been Ukrainians on NATO, on them even being at the table to talk the terms, on U.S. troop deployments, on the ending of martial law, on all sorts of stuff. Concession. Nothing on the other side. So I would say, like, honestly, what's the alternative? Any other negotiating strategy that doesn't undercut yourself and shoot yourself in the foot on a daily basis.
Don't have a plan. A few have said, well, let's give them another year of fighting. A year from now, a year later, after another year of death.
Another year of fighting is better than a fragile ceasefire. Another year of fighting with a more permanent security arrangement is much better.
Biggie Paws has donated $500.
Eons
Back to the trenches with you, war tourist.
So much better. Wait, what the fuck? $500? Who's Biggie Paws? I've never heard of this man in my life. I'm sorry, I'm a little taken aback. I'm not even trying to be mean. I'm just being, he's bought my sheer honesty. I've never seen that name in my chat before in my life. It just, when the lurkers come out and they just drop the atom bomb. Uranium fever has gone and got me down. My goodness. Yeah, I found my Saudi oil prints. Finally! I have some fans that are bankers. It's been too long. Thank God. My goodness. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. My goodness. Well, I know what I'm doing with that money. That is going to buy me a new camera. That's going to help me buy me a new camera. I got to buy 2 cameras. If anyone wants to see which cameras I'm going for, it's on my Amazon wish list. Exclamation wish list in chat. But nobody's bought them yet, so I got to buy them this month. And so if by March 15th they're not bought, I'll probably buy it myself. And so that's where that money's going.
Curd is a curd.
Where's that camera? And that long
Have
lens.
you heard of the
So I can get good drone
disinformation
shots.
campaigns launched by the pro-Assad camp to stir up ethnic tensions?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I appreciate the 500. Really. My gosh. That's the biggest donation I think I've gotten live since the house fire, actually. I've gotten a lot of like 250, 400, but I think that's the largest donation I've gotten since the house fire. It's crazy. The delay, though, you just clipped it. My goodness. Well, I got to continue with today's stories, but I think my gratefulness has been properly expressed. No? Thank you. Nathaniel Kemple asked, before we get back to Marco Rubio's statements, hey, Dylan, have you heard of the disinformation campaigns launched by the pro-Assad camp to stir up ethnic tensions? So I know that there's a lot of misinformation going on about the clashes amongst the coastline and the Alawite communities, but like, I also don't want to underplay the fact that there seems to be some videos coming out that are clearly unarmed men getting killed. Now, whether they're former Assad soldiers, whether or not they are, they even took part in the ambush. At the end of the day, POWs are not to be executed, and I mean, a lot of this violence, I'm not so positive how concentrated it even is on the ambushers. So I'm waiting to see. I don't even know if I'm gonna cover it today. I might wait till Monday to cover it so I can get more information. But right now it looks pretty bad. By the way, thank Jazz. I thought I did thank Jazz today. I thought I thanked her earlier, but I'll thank Jazz again. Thank you, Jazz. Okay, where were we? Oh, yes. Marco Rubio was saying something silly.
A war in Ukraine, is that the alternative? Another 4 years of war, another 3 years of war, in which the United States and Europe continues to pour billions of dollars into a war in Ukraine. Is that the alternative? I've asked every foreign minister I meet with, tell me your idea of how this turns out. Most don't have a plan. A few have said, well, let's give them another year of fighting. A year from now, a year later, after another year of death, another year of destruction, then maybe Putin will be ready to negotiate at that point. No one here is claiming Vladimir Putin is going to get the Nobel Peace Prize this year, or that he should be the man of the year of the Humanitarian Association. What we're arguing here is he has a very large country.
Yeah, they think Putin's a piece of shit too. But
Do they? It doesn't sound like it from the way they talk about him, the way they seem to be pursuing normalization. I mean, if he is, he would probably not be undercutting those holding him back if he was such a piece of shit before negotiations had even gone underway. I mean, if you were treating him like a piece of shit, you know what you do with shit? You flush it down the toilet. You don't let's see if I could break the toilet. Let's see if I can drain all the water. Let's see how much I can undermine the toilet in my crusade against shit. No, come on. Okay, also, can I just throw out there, and I don't know what Asmon's belief on this is, but I'm going to define my belief clearly, because I don't care if it's an unpopular position. I don't care if other people who are pro-Ukraine are scared to say it because it's, it doesn't sound good, but it's the truth. And if I don't say it, I don't know, who else is going to say it when going out and trying to shake people on this platform, on Twitch specifically. Okay? One more year of war, where afterwards the Russians feel that they're in a worse position because they've spent through their armor reserves, they spent through much of their manpower reserves, they have to spend more and more and more to recruit new soldiers. At the end of 2024, the average age of a new Russian volunteer was 50 years old. Grandpa on the front line. We're getting Afghanistan war vets to volunteer for those big down payments that are unsustainable. And we're not even talking about all the problems the Russian economy has. And so if the two proposals, if we have these two options, right, restricted to this, no other options. If the option is A, end the war now, Russia controls all of what it does, maybe even more Kherson and Zaporizhia, as well as the terms that Russia has been dictating since the start, the concessions that the United States has been wanting out of the Ukrainians, with no security assurances, but the gun cease firing, meaning it's shaky. The Russians could invade again in the future, or a year more of fighting, brutal fighting, deadly fighting, hard fighting, where the Russians spend more and more of their gas to the point where their society is feeling more pressure, their industry is feeling more pressure to meet the demands, their economy is feeling more pressure, and so they're willing to accept terms that might actually mean a permanent end to the war, meaning that future kids won't have to fight it. In my mind, if those are your only two options, you have to go with option 2. You have to. Because option 1 could see the war relaunched at a future date when your allies are distracted. Option 1 could see you giving up defensive positions, especially if they're asking for concessions like Kherson or the rest of Donetsk that have been built up. You're giving up territory, giving up land, and the ending of martial law comes with its own consequences that will undermine Ukraine's defense. And so if you're going to be making all these decisions and you're going to be taking the West Isle off the ball, you don't want to wait for the invasion of Taiwan to be the second, invasion opportunity for the Russians. Everyone's distracted because you didn't put in the strong security assurances. The Ukrainians have been invaded twice by the Russians in the last decade. Twice by the Russians. And now we're supposed to believe that because of the relationship between Trump and Putin, he won't do it again. Trump is nearly 80 years old. He is going to die soon. Okay, and when I say soon, I mean in relation to the existence of nation states. In the history of Ukraine, he will die soon. He'll die within likely the next 10 to 15 years. And he'll be president for only 4 more. Unless, well, but hopefully he'll only be president for 4 years. At the end of those 4 years, or when Trump is long gone, then what? It's not like Putin was the only one. Even if Putin dies, it's not like Putin was the only one to try to conquer Ukraine, or the only one that thinks about conquering Estonia or these other lands. This is something that's a part of Russian history. Zelenskyy says, and this is so fundamental to understanding Zelenskyy. If you know anything about Zelenskyy, let it be this one thing. Zelenskyy says that his purpose as a person in his job, as a political entity, as a soul in politics, is to end that cycle. Is to end the cycle of Soviet invasions of the Ukrainian People's Republic, of Soviet domineering over the Ukrainian peoples, of Russian invasions in 2014, Russian invasions in 2022, or Russian invasions into the beyond. He wants to stop the cycle. He wants his country to be part of the European community. Yes, that's a big priority, but more than anything is that number 1, ending the cycle. And that goes hand in hand with being part of the European community, being part of these security structures that have stopped past invasions. Maybe there's no NATO. Maybe you can come with some other arrangement that would stop it. Multiple unilateral defense pacts, something else, a European alternative to NATO that would include Ukraine. I have no clue. But without a security assurance for Ukraine, what you're offering for them is for a continuation of the cycle. And Zelenskyy wants to break from the cycle. And so when Marco proposes this, I know for the average person, an immediate end to the war would be better, but not if it just means the war is going to start again in 5 years. It has to be a just and stable end, or it's not really an end at all. It's just making you feel good. It's making you pat yourself on the back. Just a parchment peace guarantee.
They just know that saying it about him is going to cause the negotiations to go downhill. That's it. They know he's a piece of shit. Everybody knows he's a piece of shit.
It won't. It will not. Yeah. Could you imagine? Okay, I'm sorry. So Trump calls Zelenskyy a dictator. Oh, that's, would that make negotiations go downhill? I would say so. Maybe Asmon would agree so, but that doesn't get really any mention. But Trump, do you think if Trump, instead of when asked, is Putin a dictator, he said, instead of saying, oh, I don't want to say because negotiating, and then asked, is Zelenskyy a dictator? Of course. He said something like, yeah, Putin's a dictator, but we have to negotiate because, you know, I want to end the war. Do you think Putin would really pick up his phone, call Trump, and be like, I was thinking about peace, but you've hurt my feelings quite a lot. Does our friendship bracelets mean nothing to you? Our date in Helsinki? No? Like, no. He's a world leader. This isn't, you know, YouTube beef.
Yeah, everybody knows that. Like,
they're in full war footing. They're cranking out weapons now at a war footing pace, and we need to figure out, is there a way to get them to stop the war? And the only way you're going to do that is to get Russians engaged in negotiations.
After hearing that, Chris Van Hollen, who's just off the hook on Gaza, he's against the Israelis, and anything that Donald Trump's doing.
What a way to... Woo! Okay, so Chris Van Hollen's my senator. So the way he... I'm from Maryland. He's my senator. So the way he described that is crazy. That's a crazy way to describe.
Why are we listening to a basement dwelling, not showering?
Sorry.
Dirty hoarder for political takes.
Because he's the top of political Twitch despite any of that. True or not true. I mean, we've solved the roaches, but whether he has garnered attention, and that is the truth of it. And 1.1 million people watch this to try to get some understanding of what's going on over there. So, I mean, obviously it's somewhat popular. But that description of Chris Van Hollen, you know, anti-Israel, anti what we're doing in Gaza. Yeah, he's against what the Trump administration's doing in Gaza. He's not anti-Israel. He's anti-Netanyahu. He could not be anti-Israel and be a senator from the state of Maryland. Okay? Like, anti-Israel... I mean, if anti-Israel means maybe we shouldn't give them 2,000-pound bombs, maybe instead we pressure them to think Palestine should exist, then you could, anti-Israel. That's not it's anti-Israel in one extent. Like, he wants to continue to send air defense to Israel. How do you want to send a country air defense systems and be like, I hate them so much, let's shoot down anything that attacks them? It's not anti-Israel. But Trump undercuts all of this aid to Ukraine. He undercuts commercial intelligence support to the Ukrainians, doesn't allow the Ukrainians at the negotiating table, concedes everything before negotiations, does nothing to undermine the Russian prosecution of the war. Russians continue to escalate the war, continue to escalate North Korean troop deployments, continue to escalate drone strikes. And if you suggest that he could be sympathetic to the Russian cause, or he could be negotiating on their behalf, or helping them, well, that's heresy. That's Russia.
On Gaza, he's against the Israelis, and anything that Donald Trump's doing. He says he regrets his supporting Marco Rubio for Secretary of State. So does he understand, number one, Marco Rubio was sitting right there. No one told Marco Rubio what to say there. No. Number two is...
Absolutely. Absolutely, they tell Marco Rubio what to say. Are you kidding me? You think this is Marco Rubio's foreign policy? No. Marco Rubio, and from the reports I'm reading from Vanity Fair, Marco Rubio has been marginalized in the administration. He used to, he had foreign policy influence in the Senate. He was working in foreign policy in the Senate for a while. He got that 99-0 vote for a reason. That some people were hoping that, even though I think his foreign policy in many aspects is god-awful, that his at least somewhat knowledgeable, position and belief in the Euro-Atlantic relationship would be good to have in a position as usually influential as Secretary of State. But the Vanity Fair reports I am reading from both Republican insiders and others seem to indicate that Marco Rubio and friends of Marco, that he feels isolated, that he learns about foreign policy decisions often in the news, that Trump is just as chaotic when it comes to these announcements in the first term as he is in the second term, that he's learned nothing. and that it's often him trying to play catch up, you know, trying to justify his actions and after the fact. And you know what? Marco could say whatever he wants. His eyes did all the talking they need to during that Zelenskyy meeting. Just go look at that picture of his eyes during the Zelenskyy meeting as he stares off into nothingness. That's a 1,000-yard stare, okay? That's a 1,000-yard stare if I've seen one. Dylan, I'm in Red Dead multiplayer, and I think I've actually gotten through to some folks, specifically around Ukraine, with your content. Appreciate you, dude. Huh. I had no... Red Dead Online is what's going to bring back the opposite. We're going to start protests in Red Dead Online against the Trump administration for cutting off aid. That's where the first domino shall fall.
Is, the Russians are losing...
It's very clear that they're
Deep Red Missouri. Close enough. Red Dead Redemption, Missouri, present day. I don't see the difference.
Problem why I think they're mad is because things that happen publicly are not what happen privately. And so it's actually a very personal reason why people are getting pissed off about this topic. It's got nothing else to do besides other stuff.
1,000 troops a day.
Yeah.
If you read the New York Post today, they interviewed 25 people staying in Ukrainian prisons. Nobody knew what they were fighting for. They all were there because they were threatening their families or that they had absolutely no money and they promised to pay their families if they got killed. They're literally doing human sacrifices. So there's a chance that the Russians might be, we're great at misreading the Russians when they were the Soviets too. There's a chance that they might be hollowed out and might be ready. And let's just put the ball in their court. Everyone in
Wait, when we say that they're hollowed out, okay, but if you believe your negotiating opponent, right, which I don't think Trump views them in that way, but if we were assuming that the American president actually worked with international security interests for a second and, you know, cared about Ukraine getting the best deal possible, you would be making them make concessions because you believe they're hollowed out. You test them to see, like, look, we'll continue to keep going. Look, we can sign another 20 billion over. Another 20 billion, 30 billion, 40 billion. We'll see how this keeps going. Or we can talk about the future of Crimea. We can talk about you giving back Mariupol, and we can talk about these POW and children exchanges. You know, see, that would be something like, I'm not even saying that's the way it should be done. I'm just saying that would be something that would be resembling, you concede, they concede. You're fucking tired of war, they're tired of war. They're not that tired of war, apparently. At least the Kremlin isn't, even if the population is. Most of them want peace, but like, if the Kremlin is not willing to make those concessions yet, you have to add the pressure to make them make the concessions or change the conditions so that they will.
Yeah. Sign this deal, put it in the Russians' court. Yeah. And if they are going to insist on elections, more land, not returning the children, and knocking a million-man force to 85,000, everyone will know they're not sincere.
Yeah, but Zelenskyy doesn't want to do it. And I think that's the problem right now. He's showboating. He went over to the EU and tried to get all of their support in the sense of to put pressure on the president. Right. And then you got the PM as well as the ambassador, the UK ambassador to the United States say, okay, we're going to be there with you, but we still need the United States.
By the way, when we say you don't even know what the deal is, we've given up all... Brian killed me. I don't know what he's even doing here. We don't know what the deal is, so I don't know why sign the deal before we know what the actual peace deal is, the ceasefire deal is. All we know is that we've made concessions. But moving past that, I mean, is this dude on the left like a child? Who is this guy? How did he get on a TV show? Oh my, can you believe Zelenskyy went to Europe to get assistance from his other allies who aren't backstabbing him? How indignant that he would go to the people who are continuing to send him aid and saying, hey, I need support. Hey, I want reinforcement of my diplomatic position. It's negotiating. What do you expect? He's a world leader. Don't act indignant like it's offensive that he would dare speak to another nation to reinforce their diplomatic position. Of course they are. They're in survival mode. If you wouldn't do it in his position, then you obviously don't love your country enough.
So I think there's a major miscalculation from Zelensky's part. He still wants to fight this war. It's unwinnable. More people will die as a result of it. And the president's saying, like he said in the Oval, I want you to be more on our side. The president said, I can't get a negotiation. I have to be.
Yeah, Trump can't be on Zelensky's side. He can't be on Zelensky's side and solve the problem. You can do one or the other. You can't do both.
In the middle, but I'm signing a middle.
So he's just reinforcing the Fox News narrative on this. I believe Asmongold could not be further off base. I believe this is the worst advice you could possibly give the administration. This is the advice that extends the war another 2 to 3 years. If the United States completely pulls the plug and tells the Ukrainians, we're not going to support you, we're not going to reinforce your position, the Russians are going to feel emboldened. They've just confronted the West. America's weak. Europe's weak. Ukraine's weak. The Euro-Atlantic relationship is split. This is not a time to concede. This is a time to take. We're going to take land. We're going to take concessions. We're going to keep the kids. Why would they concede? Why would they concede if their negotiating position just skyrocketed and one of the biggest backers of the Ukrainians just dropped out when the North Koreans are sending more troops than ever? If anything, what you're going to do is encourage the Russian attacks. You have to make the Russians believe that a continuation of the war will be a disaster for them. That they will die, and they will die, and they will die, and they will get nothing else. If anything, they will lose it more. They might lose the government because of the unpopularity of the butchering that will... You want to make them feel pressure, because that's the only thing they understand. That's the only thing that they will understand. If you undercut the Ukrainian position, they will demand more to a point that is not acceptable to the Ukrainians. Zelensky's position in his country went up post this. With 57% popularity before, 68% popularity now. Do you think if Zelensky went to the Rada and said, we have to concede all this territory, which he has to do by law, because it's a democracy and the parliament does get a say on whether or not, territorial concessions are made. And what if they just say no? Then what? What if he makes them say yes, and then the people protest and bring down the government because they didn't want to give up Kherson, where the human safari is going on? Undercutting their position is going to make it more likely that the Russians demand the city of Kherson, where they're currently hunting civilians for either training or fun. The jury's still out, but they're openly hunting them and posting it on social media. They're going to make more demands. They don't even currently accept the European peacekeeping force that the Trump team is talking about being a security guarantee. The Russians are saying they won't accept that. So they're not even going to just accept American decoupling. They need European decoupling from Ukraine too. They will only accept an isolated Ukraine. And Asmongold's belief is, well, that's the only way to get peace. It's to isolate Ukraine. Get them to get the worst deal possible. We're just going to get another war. We're just going to get another war this way. Or we're just going to get the war to extend, or we're going to get the worst outcome because the Ukrainians will be unwilling to concede cities that have not fallen. And so those cities will then be put under siege. And then it will be brutal, brutal battles in these communities of millions. Because, I wanted a quick end to the war where the Ukrainians just rolled over. This is a terrible idea from Asmon. I don't know who told him this. I don't know if he just thinks this guy on the left is making a convincing argument, or like Fox is like giving good advice. I have no clue, but terrible. Terrible. 1.1 million.
Strategic support, but that's not enough for Zelensky right now.
That's right. Netanyahu has to deal with his right wing. He's got a right wing. And there's a right wing of Zelensky that says, you better not agree to stop fighting. They invaded us. They killed our families. They're destroying our infrastructure.
Yeah, of course.
We're doing damage. Well, so he can't just, he is not a dictator.
And he is
still dealing with a democracy and a...
Thank you, Brian Kilmeade. The only time I'll probably say that for the next 4 years, for bringing a single atom of IQ in there.
It's still unclear, though, if Vladimir Putin will agree to a deal.
It's crazy how when we're talking about the future of Ukraine, like, what the Ukrainians what the people who live there is an afterthought. Like, hey, we're gonna have peace there. I don't know. Was the Irish Troubles peace because there wasn't an official war between Ireland? Like, there is unstable pieces that aren't even really pieces because the violence continue. Like, if the Russians take Kherson and then start executing people and dumping them in rivers like they did in Crimea, is that peace? Is it peace for me to take your husband or wife and shoot them and dump them in a grave? It's peace for the person shooting. It's not for the peace. It's not peace for the person on their knees. That's for sure.
That's my point.
So, like, that's why the stability of the agreement is what matters here. That's why we need to support Ukraine. It's not as simple as just forcing Ukraine onto Russia's terms. Russia's terms, if it was their way, they would set up a situation where they can start the war again at any moment. And so if your goal is the human life, is to end the war, to end the suffering, as Trump says, lies about, then you have to have a just, long-lasting peace.
Well, here's the thing. Yesterday, the foreign minister of Russia, Lavrov, said that he saluted Donald Trump's common sense on the issue, even though they don't align on everything. And also, the foreign minister spokesperson said that what happened in the Oval Office was a miracle of restraint, they said, the Russians did, that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance did not punch Zelenskyy in the nose, essentially,
will he address
because
this
of
tomorrow
all
night?
that.
Yep. And so I'm thinking that's really where I'm at. Yeah, the Russians aren't being asked for any concessions. The Ukrainians aren't being given any security guarantees. What reason would Russia have to stop?
Great question. Okay. I have no pre-watch, zero pre-watch. What's his response to this? Remember, Hassan and Asman, these are like the two biggest voices in politics on Twitch now, right? What's his response? What do we think? See you later, Ukraine Groiper. Most progressive. What do we think? What's it going to be? I think it's just going to be like, you know, I don't want to make a prediction. I don't want to spoil my brain in advance, okay? I want to get pure, unfiltered, open-minded Asmongold opinion, okay? I got to hear it. Because that was the most valid question asked by anybody in chat up to this point.
Because Russia would probably get some of the land from Ukraine, and they'd probably get some money out of it. That's the reason, right? That's probably what's going to happen. I feel like that's the way it would resolve.
The question was, the question was how. I'm sorry. I'm trying. The question was, how do we know that the Ukrainians are going to get security guarantees, and what concessions are the Russians making? Right? Like, we need the Russians need to make concessions, right? And then he said in response to that, because they're going to get land and they're going to keep it. I don't, that's not he didn't answer the question. I don't even think he attempted to answer. He just said, like, I think the Russia's going to get land, but that's getting land and security assurance. These are two separate things, right? And like, they could get land and give a different concession, right? They could, like, for example, get Crimea and give back a different piece of land, like Mariupol, or they could, like, get Crimea, but then Ukraine joins NATO, so we know that they're never getting Zaporizhia. You know, so, like, let me hear it again. Maybe I just didn't hear, because this is the most intelligent question I've probably ever heard from an Asmongold chat, right? I don't spend much time there, so it's not really a high bar, but still. Let me hear it one more time, just to make sure I'm not mishearing something, that he didn't answer the question at all.
Key in the nose, essentially,
will he address
because
this
of all
tomorrow night?
that.
Yep. And so I'm thinking that's really where I'm at. Yeah, the Russians aren't being asked for any concessions. The Ukrainians aren't being given any security guarantees. What reason would Russia have to stop? Because Russia would probably get some of the land from Ukraine, and they'd probably get some money out of it.
So the land and money, so that they... I don't think he understands. No, okay, I got it. He doesn't understand the question, because the person is asking, if we sign this agreement and we like sign this paper and they don't have security guarantees, how do we know the Russians won't invade again? But he interprets that like, but if we concede in all these ways, why won't the Russians sign the agreement? He's like, no, let's sign the agreement because look at the land and look at all the stuff. No, that's not what the question was. The question was, okay, once they give all these, number one, the question was, shouldn't the Russians have to give concessions too, not just the Ukrainians? But the second part was, how do we stop an invasion from the future? That was the essential point of the question, and it just, and it went right over.
That's the reason, right? That's probably what's going to happen. I feel like that's the way it would resolve.
Right over his head. Completely missed it.
Yeah, and after that, I don't know. Just do it again in 5 years.
I don't know. Okay, yeah, well, I don't know.
Yeah, and after that, I don't know. Just do it again in 5 years. You can't do that. You can't give them anything if you hope for peace. What's next? I don't know. But my point is that the thing is that, like, with Ukraine being involved in this, there's two separate things. There's what should Ukraine do and what should the United...
Okay, so he doesn't have an answer for the security guarantees or any of that. I mean, he said, I don't know what happens next. So he wants to not back up the Ukrainians, but he doesn't really know what happens after you force the Ukrainians into unfavorable peace terms. Like what happens after, you know, it's done coming up in your Twitter feed and the people actually have to live with the terms that we set. That's an important stage.
United States, so reward their transgressions. A lot of people get fixated around the concept around being right and wrong.
It's not about just being right or wrong or winning a debate. If you reward a certain type of behavior, then will that behavior repeat? I mean, I could talk about this in the statecraft level, but let's just bring it down to basics. If a child steals, do you spank the child? Do you take his video games away? Or do you let him keep the stolen thing? And once you've done that, how will that affect that child's decision making? Obviously, statecraft is a little bit different, so let's bring it to a higher level. If Russia invaded and took on the United States, all of NATO, a 1 billion strong alliance, and invading Ukraine, held out for 3 years, and then after it all, when the whole world thought, oh God, it looks like they're face planning, because they were face planning, they got the concessions. They won the war. That's what the Russian public will be told. And that verbal logic will become internal logic. And while they might not invade another country right away, they probably will have to do some repairing. I think the lesson that will be taken in Russian history and the Russian psyche will not be a positive one. And I think it can lead to increasing behavior. Imagine if all of America's worst wars we won. All the worst stuff that we did and all the disgusting nuts, we won all those wars.
Curd is a curd.
How would that change our psyche? How would it change our psyche? If every single war that we probably should have lost for the good of ourselves and the good of our enemies and the good of the people who actually live in the place we're fighting over.
A curd is a curd.
If we won every single
You're
one.
expecting too much from 2 cockroaches in a trench coat.
Okay, well, you can't stop me from trying. Thank you, C. Roy, and thank you, Banksley, for the subs. Not the subs, the donations. I appreciate it.
And that's not the right way to look at things. It's naive. Yeah, it's just naive. Like,
naive.
The fact is that Russia is more powerful. Isn't it interesting that every single time in history,
war's not a spreadsheet,
the good guys win?
History is always written by the victors. It's not. It's not. And if that was the case, then I shouldn't have had to read so many of those post-World War II German general manuscripts about, oh, if only I had 3 more tanks and Hitler would have shut his fucking mouth, I could have taken Moscow. I didn't need the Heinz Guderian's, I didn't need to read those books if that was the case. I can't. This is just like a turn of phrase that happened. The losers write the history a lot. You want to know why? Because losers like to whine and whine and whine and whine. How many times have we heard Southern Confederate apologia in the United States? How many Confederate flags do we see flying down there in Dixieland? How many times do we see that Sherman obviously did not shake it enough out of him? Not that he should have done more, but that it didn't leave. Like, they still wrote stuff. They created societies who have influence on history that expanded into popular culture, expanded into all sorts of stuff. Point is, like, yes, the losers also have an impact on history. Like how exactly that history comes to light, whether it's by future historians who revision, who go back and recheck it, but like, I don't like this, oh, the history is always written by the victors. Because the reason I don't like that is I feel like it's just a statement to stop you from looking at the history or listen to historians. It's like almost, it feels like it undermines the credibility of historians in like the field of being a historian. Because it almost as if there cannot be an impartial historian from third-party countries. Like, for example, war between Germany, Poland wins, right? Let's say Poland was the bad guy in this scenario. It's the war in 2090, okay? And Swedish journalists take records, bring it back. History was not written by the victor. History was just written by somebody not even related. I'm sorry, this phrase infuriates me. Here's my deal. People are allowed to keep saying it if we burn every single one of Heinz Guderian's books, okay? So I never have to look at it again.
What are the odds? What are the odds? Wow, what a surprise. Interesting. Yeah, so interesting. This is just how it is. Russia's not so powerful. They're not whenever we are arming Ukraine and they're being armed by a bunch of other people. But if we stop arming them and we stop supporting them, then are they going to be able to push back Russia? I would say probably not, right? I would say
but
definitely.
Also, let's also say, like, it's not just about pushing back Russia, because people are like, well, we can't expel the Russians. I guess they won. It's like, wait a second. They wanted to take the capital. And right now, there's like a question if they're settling for 20% and they come back and take more later. The Russians are the attackers. To attack, they bleed, they pain, they take, to occupy, it takes power, it takes time, it takes resources. There is like in Vietnam, the thing wasn't like, oh, the Viet Cong physically expelled the Americans, was it? No. The Tet Offensive, from a hard spreadsheet style calculus of war, was a massive failure for Ho Chi Minh and his army. Massive failure. But because of how it was covered, because of American resources that we could dedicate, because of how many coffins were coming back, a whole bunch of other factors, it ended up actually being pretty negative for the United States. And it's because we were the ones there occupying. We had to dedicate the resources. We had to go on the attack. They take a village. We have to go to the village and take it back. They never even got to the point where they're like that. They've taken 20% of the country, and they still have to take 80% of it left if they wanted to reach their original goals. And so they still have other goals they want to meet. If they want to hold on to the stuff they have, they're going to continue to have to dedicate troops and troops and troops. So the fact that this is them bleeding, the country bleeding, its wealth, its people, its resources, that is a negotiating chip. The fact that you can sit, that if the Ukrainians were willing to bear it, of course, that's up to them, say, look, we would be willing to fight another year and continue to increase this pressure on you if it meant we got better terms.
Not. And so the fact is that it is on us, and it basically is our decision on what to happen. Like, that's the truth. They lose immediately without our weapons and support. Yeah, exactly. And
people got to stop underestimating the Ukrainians. It's one thing to say, like, their struggle's going to be a lot harder. It's going to put a lot more up into question whether they can win. It's going to be dependent upon this is going to make it much harder. So, oh, they can't. They'll immediately lose. Immediately lose. None of these people are watching this war, okay? None of these people are watching this war. Immediately lose. The Russians still have so many big cities they have to capture. Think about how many resources they dedicate to just capturing the smaller villages that they're capturing now. The Ukrainians have more population that they could mobilize. The Europeans are dedicating more resources. It's going to tip some of the power scale in favor of the Russians. It's going to tip the scale when it comes to, you know, the amount of aid they were getting. But this idea of this immediate collapse, and these are people who watch Hollywood movies. It would be a slow death, if any death. Dan Gilman, thank you so much for the I thought it was a donation. I don't know why I did. I'm going crazy. Is this what Americans think nowadays? I feel like barely anyone is aware of what Russia has done to Ukraine at all. No, but no, I have not met a single American that I've brought up the human safari to that they've known what it is. They don't. Most of the stuff that goes down in Ukraine, they don't know. They don't know about the POW executions. I mean, they remember stuff from the beginning, but they don't know how it's escalated in some ways, and they don't know what the state of the occupied territories is really like. Not to mention, like, their history of behavior. Like, most Americans, getting Americans sometimes to understand their own history is hard enough. Getting them to understand other countries' histories can be even harder.
And they don't understand that Putin needs to be appeased for this to work.
This is true of not only Americans, by the way, but right now it is a problem.
I think that he can't get out of it without getting something out of it, right? The issue is also kind of U.S. withdrawing support has broken any agreement with Ukraine at the cost of Ukraine dismantling their nuclear arsenal, though. Yeah, but the thing is that Ukraine dismantling their nuclear arsenal in like 1994, it's got nothing to do with now. That's not... The thing is, like, they're not going to make decisions based off of that now. That's not what's going to happen. It does. No, see, like, again, people a lot... This is... This is the way I look at things.
Nuclear non-proliferation does matter. I believe it matters. I think that more countries with more nukes makes it more likely for there to be a disaster. I think American credibility matters when we make agreements. If we're saying that our agreements, you know, they don't really matter because we don't feel like they matter anymore because, you know, then American credibility is shot. I believe we should be a credible country. I believe we should not act like a snake. And I also believe that, again, if we ask countries to make sacrifices for their security, we should have some respect for that. Like, you could say, you can call it morality all you want. There is some morality attached to it. I am not a being without morals, and I do not believe politics should be devoid of morals. But also, it can be within America's self-interest.
And agreements are for nothing? Yeah. Yeah, definitely. They are.
Look, I'm just gonna be honest.
And if you go back and
having like streamers, this is the easiest for me to believe, by the way. Streamers immediately being like, what do you mean agreement? What do you mean we made a contract? What do you mean we agreed to do something, or we made a promise or a commitment? What, to show up to a date, to do something, to, you know, pay? Oh, what, you don't want to keep your commitments? A streamer doesn't want to keep his commitments? I've never heard of such a thing. Like, yeah, a streamer not caring about credibility, or look, I'm beating at it too much. But I think our credibility matters. I think that we can all be like, oh, if you look at American history, we backstabbed tons of people. That's not good. That's bad. That's not a good thing. Being known as a backstabber is going to make people not want to work with you. Like, if you look at a lot of times on like history of mafia stories, or like clans that fall, or just the history of nation states, the nation state or the leaders that backstab literally everyone are not the ones that have long and prosperous rules.
History, you're going to find all of history is littered with broken agreements. Everything. It's all littered. So many broken agreements. All the time that happens. Times change. Yeah, exactly.
What do you mean times change? It's been... It's not like been 100 years and this is an out-of-date regulation on caboosemen. This is a security arrangement that was supposed to dictate their giving up of atomic weapons. You want to know, the times literally haven't changed. The times have changed not at all. Because you want to know what the reason the agreement was made? The agreement was made because the United States believed, as it still does, that less nation states having atomic weapons is better, for it lessens the likelihood of atomic nuclear hellfire, right? This is a calculation that JFK made, and it was adopted by every subsequent presidency in at least some part, right? So this is something that I believe matters, okay? Today, as much as it did back then. So when we say the times have changed, I do not believe the threat of a nuclear bomb burning around our homes has necessarily changed. If that bomb fell on me today, it would do as much damage as it did 30 years ago. You know what else hasn't changed? The Ukrainians wanting security guarantees. You know what else hasn't changed? The Ukrainians wanting security guarantees and assurances from the United States because of the Russians, who we told them to give their missiles to, which they then, to show you how little times have changed, used the exact missiles they gave to the Russians, put them full of traditional warheads, explosive devices, fired them at Ukraine. So I would make the argument that the times have changed very minimally.
So the fact is that the only thing that matters is who has power, who has the ability to exercise that power, and to what extent can they exercise that power. That is what matters. Everything else doesn't matter.
Wow. Cold realist.
Like the ideology, who's right, who's wrong, who did it first.
The ideology and who did it first doesn't matter when making peace agreements or security assurances. Well, I mean, if you wanted to make a security assurance that stayed, I think like knowing who tends to break it to put protections in place is pretty important. I also do think ideology matters. I think democracy matters. I'll say it. I don't know if that's controversial to say, but I think the Ukrainians wanting to have a democracy makes sense. You know, if you use freedom of expression on the internet and give political opinions, including things like advocating for the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, as Asmongold has done, those things are crazy, crazy things to say, but he's protected by the First Amendment. Now, if you're in occupied Ukraine and you say Putin's kind of dumb, well, too bad. Can't do that anymore. Welcome to the torture chamber. So I do think these things matter. And we should not talk, oh, morality. When we're saying that, what we're saying is democracy doesn't matter. Whether you have democracy, whether you have freedom of expression, these things don't really matter. If you have this position, you're never going to be able to get the Ukrainians to negotiate peace through this type of thinking, because these things matter to them, and these things are things that they fought and were willing to die for. So obviously, if they're willing to fight and die for it, that's power. Freedom has power. It has the power of the people. And ignoring that is a fool's errand. It's what Yanukovych did.
Should be rewarded, everything like that's all bullshit. None of that's real. What's real is the ability to exercise force on somebody else and kill them. And if they can kill you, it doesn't matter if you're right when you're dead. And that's it.
This sounds like what the burglar in Asmongold's house said before, and then taking his laptop, man. Like, this is not good. This is not how we should dictate statecraft. I think there should be some morality dictating our statecraft, because we need to show a consistency, I think, in our thinking. I think that is better to be unified with nation states through a common way of thinking. When making agreements, I think you're more likely to work together. I also do think freedom generally leads to more prosperous societies and more prosperous trading partners, more prosperous people. I mean, I think these things matter. I think we shouldn't just completely discount it. I don't know why we're going with such the cold realist, like, morality and statecraft doesn't matter. It's power above all. I mean, you know, I think it does. If it didn't, I don't know if, you know, the Ukrainians would have fought so hard. Ay. Poor burglar picked the worst house.